Sasa kunikuwa wengine wanaongea maneno ya sijui Limuru 3. Limuru 3 tokoria kana togoikia ikobe. Itatuletea nini hii Limuru 3? Na hao watu wa Limuru 3 ni wale wanaweka sufuria kwa vichwa. Hiyo maneno yote tusiyasikie. This is not time for politics. It is time to work. Na lazima tufanye kazi. Hao wengine wako na midomo kubwa. It's because they are so idle. They have nothing to do. We have everything to do for this country. And therefore, wacheni tufunge masikio. Sisi wakisema ati wakuja, wasidhubutu kufikiria watakuja hapa Nyandarua. Kuna mbwa kali, na mbwa kali ni mama county. Hamwezi kuja hapa Nyandarua to derail us. We are not going to allow to be derailed. We have goals to achieve. Sisi wasituletee nyef. Wasituletee makelele mingi. Tuko kazini, hatuna time to waste. Na waambiwe mama county amesema hivyo. Sisi ni kazi tunafanya na tutaendelea kufanya. Mtu asisumbue president wetu na deputy wetu. Wanafanya kazi. Wacheni wafanye kazi. Ikiwa Tinga aliitikia hii maneno, hawa ni kina nani nao? Yeye si aliitikia na akaingia. Si tuko sawa sawa? Na tunamtafutia kiti. Yeye aende, mimi niko hapa, wacha aende. Akienda hakuna makelele mingi, wacha Tinga aende akaongea na huko. Ya Kenya yake ya kuongea iliisha. Sawa sawa? Thank you very much. Sikuongea sana. Uzuri wa
one of the focus that I will be pushing in Washington is trade and investment between the US and Africa. And one of the instruments that is in place is the Africa Growth and Opportunities Agreement. So AGOA is one big element that gives Africa quota-free, duty-free access to the huge American market. It is not about Kenya alone. It's about the continent. And it speaks to the subject I already said, value addition, agro-processing, manufacturing. How do we make sure that this market that is available to us as a continent, we don't send their raw materials? We create jobs locally, we create value locally, and export finished products. That way we get more value. So that is one aspect. But even as I speak to that, we also need to be organized. And this is a conversation also we intend to have internally as a continent. President Kagame did a wonderful job with the reform of the African Union. A job in the last summit of the AU he handed over to me. I intend to complete the job President Kagame started of reforming the African Union so that it is fit for purpose and it focuses on three critical things. Number one, it becomes a clearer, louder voice for our continent. Credible, speaking for 1.4 billion people. Clearer in the sense that we were initially a liberation movement. That's now behind us. All countries in the continent are liberated. We need to refocus Africa Union so that it does our economic diplomacy. Number one, trade, investment. Number two, it becomes our instrument for peace and security. This continent is ravaged by conflict. We have war this way, that way, the other way. We must be able to manage conflict, reduce war, so that we can focus this continent as a continent of investment. Nobody will invest in our continent if there is conflict everywhere. EU must have a bigger muscle to speak to that issue. And number three, to make sure that EU focuses on matters infrastructure. And when I say infrastructure, I am talking about physical infrastructure, roads, railways. I am talking about digital infrastructure, making sure that we leverage on technology to make sure that we unlock the potential of the continent. I am talking about infrastructure broadly. Those are, in my opinion, the three things we must do to get the EU being focused so that it speaks for 1.4 billion people, gets our market organized so that we can trade, we can engage with other entities, whether it's the US, whether it is China, whether it is Europe, whether it is India, at par. And this is one of the assignments that we as leaders in this continent have taken it upon ourselves, that we are going to get organized so that we don't have a fragmented market. We have a voice that is loud, that is clear, that is focused around the AU. When the current multilateral development banks came into being in 1945, countries like Kenya did not exist. And yet, Kenya is now the 7th largest, maybe 6th largest economy in Africa. We're a big player. And yet, our status is neither here nor there. It is time that we have a new conversation, because the lenders are important, but the borrowers are important too. Development partnership has two components on both sides. So we must have a candid conversation so that we have an organization that is democratic, that is representative, so that all of us have an equal voice on what happens. And that is why when we had the meeting of IDA, we put our propositions on the table. We believe there should be a fairer, more balanced representation at the multilateral development banks boards, so that our voice, our ideas, our suggestions are on the table. That's number one. Number two, we believe that we must go for a win-win outcome. Why do we put more resources? Do we put more resources in expensive loans, or do we put more resources in concessional loans? Our proposal is that the concessional window of resources has many benefits. Number one, it is concessional. Number two, it is long-term. Number three, it is easy for it to be leveraged, private sector, to enhance those resources. The international community is now awake to the reality that what we are saying is not what everybody thinks. What we are saying makes sense. That we need a fairer system. When Kenya, for example, when we went to the financial markets in January, because I had to, we got resources to move forward at 11%, 10 point something percent. This is exactly what we've been saying. I mean, other countries access the same facilities at 1%. So if we are getting it at 10% and others are getting it at 1%, where is the fairness? How do we develop equally? This is a conversation we must have. When we say Africa is paying 5 times more, it is not just talk. It is a reality we live through every day. And that is why we are pushing every lever to make sure that concessional resources are available so that we can pull countries out of debt distress and we can do more for our citizens and do more for development, so that countries don't spend more in servicing debt than in paying for medicine for their citizens. I don't think it is the case that they are not listening. I think they are. In fact, we have managed to move the debate where it was to where it is. When we started this debate, the whole proposition of reforming the international financial architecture, nobody used to listen to it. Today, every country, from the US to European Union to China, all of them have come to the conclusion that what we were saying, that the current international financial architecture is not fair, everybody has come to agree with us. And in fact, they are now asking, what is the mechanism of us to reform this financial architecture? So that's number one. I think we have a win there, but everybody now agrees there is a problem. This international financial architecture is not fair. That's number one. Number two, already there is a realization that what we have been saying, that we need more concessional resources, there is already a convergence of thoughts. And I could see it last 2 weeks when we had the IDA conference in Nairobi, that there is now a greater realization that African countries, countries in the developing world need concessional, long-term, adequate resources. And number three, the World Bank, the IMF actually, has already come round. The SDR, special drawing rights, that initially benefited countries that did not need the money. Now, they have agreed that we need to rechannel the SDRs through, our proposal was Africa Development Bank, because that way it will get to more developing countries like Kenya, Rwanda, and others, and it will get to those countries at concessional rates. And again, those resources can be leveraged so that we get more resources into our economies.
Pesa mtanichukuanga hivyo. Hata mimi. So mwili ikikosa damu inapata anemia. If it is not
support that we can fund kuona umesimama. Sawa sawa. So it is the
government for the next how long mpaka nijaze ile pesa ya vitu ambavyo nataka kufanya. So when you have such a goal, na una work with the college na unakula hapo weka wapi? Kwa bank. So that account yako inakuwa active. Hiyo. Unaona hiyo? That is your goal for the next. Acha nikucheka. We are discussing a goal. Sasa tumeanza financial literacy. Setting. And in goal setting, we have to set something they call a SMART goal. A SMART? Hiyo jina mmeipata. A and R. For me as a student, is it achievable? Is it achievable? Tuko mwezi gani? That is May 2020. You ask yourself those questions. This goal that I have, is it achievable? Is it realistic? But nikipewa 6 months, I'm sure I can buy myself a shoe at 3,000. Kwa sababu
nasema nimeenda university. Sawa sawa. Na hiyo ikikuingia utakuwa you will go far because of that first step that you took. So believe in what you're learning. Believe in yourself. And let me tell you.
Proposal mpate na mimi nikasema pia hapo kwetu tufanye. So waka
You saw some clouds, but it's been quite sunny here.
We walked, for example, if I talk about Kenya, a year ago we were in a devastating, that there is now a greater realization that African countries.
William Ruto, everybody. Very, very